Grace, mercy, and peace are yours in abundance from our Lord and our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. Meet a certain father. He loved his job. He loved every moment he was at work. He loved the hours that he poured in there. If there was ever a need for overtime, he was the first person to volunteer. He loved his job, and, well, his employers loved him too. He was certifiably a workaholic. He loved the satisfaction that he had there at that business. It consumed him. He put all of his work into that. But it caused a problem. You see, when he got home, he was so exhausted. He poured all of his energy into that job. So he had time every night for four things: eat dinner, read the newspaper, watch TV, and go to bed. That's all that he had really done. And he realized he had a problem because he felt like he barely knew his 10-year-old daughter. His work had just taken him away from what he felt was important. So he asked her if on the weekends they could have some daddy-daughter time and have this shared common interest where they could build that relationship together. And of all things, what caught his daughter's eye? It was this model kit to build a ship, to build a boat inside a glass bottle. That's what she wanted them to build. So right away, Dad gets home and he sets up that workspace in the garage, and this is going to be their project. This is going to be what builds and grows them together. Dad was so optimistic. As soon as they got the kit open, he was thrilled to carve the wood pieces of that model. And he was amazed just how neat his work looked. This looked like work that belonged in stores, that he could maybe even make money off this. He was so happy until he looked over. And then his stress started to build. Because in his daughter's work, he saw the nicks caused by inexperience. He saw those imperfections that you would expect from a 10-year-old who had never carved anything in her life. It just wasn't up to his perfectionist standard. Finally, he asked his daughter if she wouldn't mind just going inside and watching TV, so he would finish up the carving and make sure it looked right. Next weekend came, it was time to paint. Oh, Dad was excited. Once again, he had looked forward to this time. He didn't expect to be so good at painting, but he just was. Everything perfectly coated. Everything looked perfect. Until again, he looked over. And it's not that his daughter's work was bad. His daughter's work was above average for a 10-year-old. His daughter's work was great. But there were too many spots where there was just too much paint. And there were too many areas where the paint wasn't evenly coated, and he just couldn't handle it. Finally, he said, you know, how about you go play outside? I'll finish this up. And he spent his time making sure the work his daughter did was once again perfect. It's finally time to build the model. And with this, you have to put in that little boat. The masts are all bent down, and you need to hook it so that as you gently pull, the sails go up. And Dad told his daughter, "Are you excited? This is all you. You can do this." But when the time actually came, he saw his daughter's hand was just shaking just a little bit. And although she had reached in and it was working well, she was still shaking too much for Dad's comfort. So Dad said, you know what, how about I just do it? It'd be a shame for something to go wrong. And he reached over, and sure enough, he perfectly got that boat in place. That was the first ship in a bottle that this father-daughter team had made. Do you know how many of these they made overall? One. And his daughter hated that bottle. Because that wasn't the project when they spent time together. That was the time when Dad was too stubborn to see what an opportunity he had and an opportunity that he had just wasted. And isn't that a shame? Because his intentions were great, right? I'm going to do this thing to build and grow my relationship with my daughter. It's going to be this wonderful thing. But he missed the point. Somewhere along the line, he changed his priorities from having this bonding time into making a piece of art worthy for a museum. It's so easy to miss the point. It's a lot harder to get it. We need to be careful to make sure that we have our priorities in order. Because it's easy for us to have good intentions and find ourselves totally off the rails. And Jesus helps us with this. He gives us a lesson about the one thing that's needful, the only thing that is needed, and how we can make that the priority for our lives. Martha had her priorities mixed up. She was so excited to host Jesus in her house, but then she found herself overwhelmed about actually preparing that space for Jesus' company. You've probably been there before too. You're running around going from room to room, making sure that the food is prepped perfectly. You're making sure that every room in the house is clean. And you're hoping against all hope that that doorbell will not ring, at least not for another 10 minutes, because there's just a few things that need to get done. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm the only one who's been there. But I know that dreaded doorbell moment. They didn't have doorbells back then, but Jesus knocked on the door, and he was there sooner than Martha would have hoped. She knew she couldn't be the great entertainer she hoped to, because the food wasn't even in the oven. She had to get back to that, and things still needed to be straightened up. So very quickly after Jesus arrived, she's running from room to room, exhausted. And what does she see? Mary's not even running at all. She's not even up. She's sitting. She is sat down at Jesus' feet. And you can picture the first time she saw that, she was probably pretty annoyed. But 5 minutes pass as Martha's running around from room to room, and she sees that Mary's still there. And now things are about to get thermonuclear. Don't you care, Jesus, that I'm the one running around doing all this work? Don't you see how lazy she is? She won't even lift a finger to give me a hand. Jesus, tell her to help. Mary, well, she wasn't accidentally there at Jesus' feet. She wasn't there because she was lazy. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. Oh, what does Jesus do? Does Jesus chew out Mary? No. Martha, Martha, you are worried about a great many things. But Mary has chosen what is better. And what she has will not be taken away from her. Only one thing is needed. Martha's intentions were great. It's good to be a good host. But she totally missed the point. And she didn't prioritize what was most important in meeting with Jesus. It wasn't about what she was going to do. It was what Jesus had to say. Sometimes I think we've all missed the point. When things which seemed important took Jesus' time out of our lives. It's easy to miss the point and assume that because we're so busy we have to run around from room to room staying active, while forgetting that the one thing needful is Jesus. Listen to him. hear what he has to say. I don't know if you remember the words we looked at last week. Immediately before this, ending in verse 37, Jesus told the parable of the Good Samaritan. Don't these two things seem like they are opposites? Like these ideas are butting against each other? Jesus just told us that if we love our neighbor, it will take real time and real resources. You need to get off the couch. And now what does Jesus say? Sit down and listen. And hear what you need to hear. Is this a contradiction? How do we resolve this dilemma? Well, to do so, I'm just going to point you back to some training you've received if you've ever flown on an airplane. You have that flight attendant who quickly gets everyone up to speed. If there's an emergency, oxygen masks will drop down from the ceiling. It is important, if oxygen masks drop down from the ceiling, that you put your mask on first. Fight every paternal instinct you have. You need oxygen before you can help anyone else. And that's true with this. That's true with our Christian lives. We need something before we can actually serve. And this thing is much more important even than oxygen. That's not an exaggeration. That's not hyperbole. Jesus is more important than anything else. And he has a lot to say. Sit at his feet and listen. He speaks and reminds us how helpless we've been. He reminds us of the fact that we aren't perfect. We actually don't even deserve him in our life. We haven't made him the priority he has made us. Sometimes he gets the scraps, the leftovers. He invites us to listen so he can tell us what we need to hear. We have a huge problem. Without him, it's a problem far more dangerous than the lack of oxygen. It's an eternity in hell. And then he speaks once more and reminds us that that doesn't mean we're worthless to him. You aren't worthless to him. You are his highest priority. And as he speaks, he proves it. He proves it with signs and wonders. He did that in his ministry, right? Those signs and wonders are the miracles that he put on display. Yet how does he prove his amazing love for you? For his sign, he shows you his hands, which have been pierced, and feet, which were nailed. He reminds you of what love led him to. He didn't refuse a baby's crib, even though he is true God from all eternity. He did not refuse his cross, even though he's the only innocent human being who has ever lived. He didn't refuse his tomb, because he wants something so much better than that for you. He suffered everything to get you that better life. It's not like a crucifixion is an easy way to die, but that's not even the tip of the iceberg. He would suffer for every mistake, every fault, every flaw that has shown itself in your life and in my life, yet he gladly did it, and proves his love. Proves the fact that you're not his afterthought. You are his priority. He will see you all the way to eternity. He won't abandon you, even though he abandoned his life for a moment, for 3 days. He won't abandon you. He rose and promises you will rise too. Now let's go back to airport training school 101 with those flight attendants. You have that oxygen mask over your mouth. You are breathing in the good news of everything Jesus Christ has done for you. Do you let the person next to you who can't put his mask on suffocate? has done leads us to breathe out good works, to care about the people who God has weaved into our lives, to be the Good Samaritan who will spend time and resources in serving one's neighbor. Jesus makes that balance possible because we don't do all that as though we owe God one, and if we are real Christians, well, we need to contribute something to be rescued. No, Jesus has done the rescue mission. When we think about all that he has done, he doesn't get our scraps anymore. We give him our time, our affection, and our attention, and we see that we do that as we serve our neighbor as well as we serve God. One thing's needful. Keep breathing Jesus in. You can't serve if you take off that oxygen mask. You can't. We need that balance of sitting at Jesus' feet before we can truly serve. But you know what? The more you do sit at Jesus' feet, the more you will serve. Because you'll be reminded of how much Jesus has done for you. Only one thing is needed. May Jesus continue to be our number one priority. You will be his. Amen.